When a complex system breaks down, the failure rarely starts at the edges, it starts at the center. Data flows smoothly through a network until a single critical central hub becomes overwhelmed, freezing the entire grid. In an organization, that central node is the manager. If a workflow fails, whether through misaligned personnel, poor system design, or broken communication, it is inherently a failure of management. New managers frequently fall into a specific operational trap. They assume their role is to personally solve every problem their team encounters. In management theory, an unsolved problem is often referred to as a monkey. When an employee brings an issue and the manager replies, "Leave it with me," the monkey immediately jumps from the employee's back to the manager's. The burden is transferred upward. Accumulating these tasks creates a severe systemic imbalance. The manager becomes permanently overworked, while the team remains idle, waiting for directions and failing to develop their own problem-solving skills. The bottleneck in most failing systems is not a lack of team competence. It is a manager's failure to deflect tasks back to their rightful owners. Corporate culture often relies on trait theory, the myth that great leaders are simply born with the right personality or inherent charisma. Effective leadership is actually rooted in transaction theory. This model defines management not as an identity, but as a repeatable set of actionable behaviors. To maintain system health, a manager must actively balance 3 core variables on a daily basis. This diagram shows action-centered leadership. It divides a manager's focus into 3 overlapping circles: task, team, and individual. Over-indexing on the task ensures short-term objectives are met, but it burns out the team and neglects individuals. Conversely, focusing entirely on the team and individual circles keeps morale high, but fails to produce measurable results. Management is a constant, transactional balancing act. It requires pushing toward the objective while simultaneously nurturing the human components required to achieve it. Achieving that structural balance means treating leadership as a mechanical process. Specifically, it involves calibrating a slider between managerial authority and subordinate autonomy. This framework maps the exact relationship between the degree of managerial authority used and the amount of freedom their team possesses. This chart shows that relationship visually. The diagonal line separates the leader's use of authority on the top left from the subordinate's area of freedom on the bottom right. On the far left, the manager tells or sells. Maximum managerial authority is applied, resulting in 0 team input. The manager makes the decision and simply announces it. Moving to the far right, the manager shares and delegates. Decreasing managerial authority expands the team's operational boundaries, allowing subordinates to function within defined limits. This diagram shows the systemic trade-offs that occur when a manager moves along this control continuum. There is a distinct time paradox at play. Telling is fast initially, but delegating requires a massive upfront investment of the manager's time to properly brief and monitor the team. That time cost must be weighed against the payoff. Motivation and quality only scale outward when control is relinquished, and the team takes ownership of the problem. Retaining strict control saves time today, but guarantees a mediocre, dependent team tomorrow. Delegating sacrifices time today to buy high-quality autonomy in the future. If the goal is to release control, at what point does giving it away cross the line into complete system negligence? Even when a task is fully delegated, 2 critical variables must remain active: monitoring the execution and providing support. We can map the combinations of these 2 variables on a simple matrix, with support on the y-axis and monitoring on the x-axis. The bottom left quadrant represents low support and low monitoring. We label this abdication. It is the act of assigning a task and walking away completely. Abdication ensures the system will eventually crash because it removes all feedback loops. And when the failure occurs, the manager remains solely responsible. The bottom right quadrant represents high monitoring paired with low support. We label this the seagull. The seagull manager flies in, makes a lot of noise, drops heavy criticism, and immediately flies away, without offering any actual solutions or guidance. True delegation is not abandonment. It requires transferring execution to the team, while the manager formally transitions into a dedicated support and monitoring node. This raises a practical problem. How does a manager know exactly where to place a specific employee on that control continuum? Management cannot operate as a blanket policy. The grip must adapt precisely to an individual's current capability for any given task. This chart illustrates the situational leadership framework, mapping a team member's competence against their commitment and motivation. An enthusiastic new learner has high motivation but low competence. This person requires a highly direct management style, where the leader dictates exactly what to do. Moving to the bored, misdirected, or misunderstood quadrant, the employee has high competence but low motivation. This drop in drive requires an involve style, consulting them for ideas to rebuild their buy-in. The ultimate target is the experienced and fulfilled quadrant. Here, competence and motivation are both high, meaning full delegation is finally appropriate. An effective manager operates like a diagnostician. They constantly read the competence and motivation levels of their team and adjust their grip accordingly. While the manager adjusts their control from the top down, the employee undergoes a structural progression from the bottom up, moving from dependency to full operational autonomy. We can measure this precise growth in autonomy using a specific hierarchical framework. This diagram shows the freedom ladder, tracking reporting structure. The lowest rung, wait until told, is the highest managerial grip, reserved for beginners. Transitioning through the middle rungs, employees begin suggesting actions. At the top rung, free to act, they execute autonomously, updating managers afterward. Every daily interaction, coaching session, and delegated task should be purposefully designed to push an employee one rung higher up this ladder. If a team reaches the top of the freedom ladder and handles routine reporting on their own, what is the manager actually left to do? This image, the Christmas tree of competence, shows the stark divide between an employee who is not yet competent and one fully competent. The left requires heavy operational coaching and defined instructions. On the right, the expert is self-guided, self-reliant, and self-correcting. This reveals the ultimate paradox of excellent leadership. A great manager's primary objective is to render their own daily operational input entirely obsolete. When employees execute autonomously, they free up the manager's time. The manager can stop looking downward at daily tasks and start looking outward, focusing on the overarching vision, monitoring systemic health, and preparing for future disruptions. By systematically giving away control, a manager stops being a bottleneck. They cease to be a taskmaster, becoming the architect of a self-sustaining system.